Welcome, everyone, to the first virtual Mayor's Neighborhood Summit. Although we held two prior in-person summits last year, COVID-19 has prevented those in-person events this year. But we didn't want to stop the success of these events, so we've gone virtual. I've always stressed how important neighborhoods are to Lexington. That's where I first learned so much about our community. Neighborhood associations and groups can really make quality of life better. And if you don't live in an area with a neighborhood association, you can still work together with your neighbors to beautify and advocate. And you can form a neighborhood association. Right now, in the middle of a global pandemic, our neighbors are more important than ever. Now is the perfect time to give a neighbor a call, knock on the door and leave a special treat, or simply just say hello, wearing your mask, of course. We are all facing isolation as we battle COVID-19, and our neighborhoods can be the sense of community we need. The neighborhood summits are focused on sharing information and ideas. Even though we can't do this in person over coffee and donuts, we can still listen and learn. Before we move on to today's discussion, I want to recognize our council members. They serve our city well, and they work with our neighborhoods every single day. Thank you, council members, for stepping up to the plate and representing our community voices. In case you don't know your council member, let me just quickly go through them. Vice Mayor Steve Kay, council members at large Richard Maloney and Chuck Ellinger, 1st District Council Member James Brown, 2nd District Council Member Josh McKern, 3rd District Council Member Mark Swanson, 4th District Council Member Susan Lamb, 5th District Council Member Bill Farmer, 6th District Council Member Lisa Higgins Horde, 7th District Council Member Preston Worley, 8th District Council Member Fred Brown, 9th District Council Member Jennifer Masadi, 10th District Council Member Amanda Mays Bledsoe, 11th District Council Member Jennifer Reynolds, and 12th District Council Member Kathy Plowman. Today is the first of a 3-day series where I'll join panelists to discuss topics affecting our community. Today, we focus on Lexington's public works and infrastructure. When we talk about public works and infrastructure, a lot comes to mind: streets and road maintenance, waste management, water quality. But there's a lot more to it than just those things. Today, I'm joined by 3 panelists who work diligently to provide infrastructure that is safe and efficient and promotes a healthy quality of life. I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves and tell us what type of projects each works on each day. So first up, we have our city's Commissioner of Environmental Quality and Public Works, Nancy Albright. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about some of the bigger picture items in public works that are going on right now. So one of the areas that we'll focus on is the road construction projects going on. Those are the ones that I'll look at. And as several of you may have heard, we are starting the last section of Clay's Mill widening here soon. In fact, they are building the diversions for that work this fall so that come spring we can start the widening in earnest. And that goes all the way from just past the New Circle Road overchange all the way up to where it terminates at Harrodsburg Road. So we're very excited to get that last section underway. I know that's been a long time coming. As a member of that part of the community, I appreciate it as much as several others do. Some of our smaller projects include the recent completion of a culvert on James Lane. That's more in the county, but it's a critical need, undersized, very old culvert that was starting to fail. And we had to close James Lane this summer in order to complete that work. And it has been finished and the road restored this year, a small but important section of our rural area that we have been able to restore service to. And then as Brandy's going to mention more about trails, I won't mention much about that right now, just to say we all know that trails and our biking and walking community is very important to the city of Lexington. And as such, in addition to the trail projects, we are working on several sidewalk projects. And so whether it's Mount Tabor, Old Todd's Road, Oxford Circle, Rosemont Garden, Wilson Downing, there are lots of areas around town where we are restoring, improving sidewalks, and then filling in some gaps, as you may realize exist around Lexington, where it's hard to have connectivity. So we are finishing a lot of those projects and starting others. And finally, the last big project that I would bring up right now is the Versailles Road corridor improvements have started and are making great progress. And they are, again, it's very focused on improving pedestrian and bicycle connectivity on Versailles Road from Mason Headley down to Parker's Mill, and improving the sidewalks, improving some retaining walls that will allow us to widen the bike paths and the sidewalks in those areas, improving pedestrian crosswalks through there. So very excited about that. That project has started and is making good progress throughout the winter, should be able to continue. Operationally, I'll just bring up quickly that we are in the middle of leaf collection. As several folks know, we are on schedule, making good time right now. Weather has been favorable. So we are excited that the project goes well from year to year and is pretty well received by everybody in Lexington. It is primarily city forces that move over to leaf collection for 6 weeks a year. They are supplemented by not only our streets and roads staff, we have staff from water quality that helps, staff from parks and recreation that comes helping, and then we have a contractor that helps us make sure we get everything done. We tend to move from the west side of the county to the east, just following kind of the weather patterns. So that if you wonder why we are in certain areas and not others, that's a part of it. And kind of part of it too is what kind of trees and when they fall during the fall season. So there's a lot of thinking and strategizing that goes into leaf collection, and we try to be in front of 90,000 homes over a 6-week period. So it is a big effort from all of us to get that done. And then finally, Mayor, if you want, I can do it now. I can wait until a little later. There was a question about paper recycling.
Okay, let's wait just a minute.
Yes, ma'am.
But don't let me forget.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Next, I want to introduce you to our city's Director of Water Quality, Charlie Martin. Charlie?
Mayor, thanks for having me. I'm really pleased to be here. Always stuff going on with us, as you know. It's so glamorous, pipes and manholes and the things that we do. We've had our fair share of that. I'll save the Euclid Avenue stuff for later. Probably the projects that folks maybe not are paying as much attention to because they're not in your neighborhood. We're wrapping up the East Hickman pump station and wet weather storage complex, which is at the dead end of Alumni Drive. If you take it all the way out there, it basically ends where we've built this new location at. $15 million project that is now finally getting ready to wrap up. What's exciting, I think, for the neighborhoods, though, is that they plan on turning part of that excess property into a park area, kind of a dog walk and things like that. So a real win, I think, for the neighborhood, and the fact that we took care of that pump station that wasn't performing very well, but also was able to create some additional surplus property that the neighborhood can use as a park or a passive recreation type of area. We've got a couple of projects that we've got right on the launching pad that are just about ready to go, probably starting sometime in January, what we call the Southeastern Hills Pipeline Project. That's down around Appian Way, Tates Creek Road area. We actually had the neighborhood kickoff meeting for this back in February. So this is one of those projects that the COVID and the pandemic kind of derailed the progress on. But we're finally at a point now to where we're ready to rock and roll with that one. Likewise, over on the other side of town, we have what we call the Wolf Run DE project, and this is in Garden Side area. Basically, we'll be coming up from Maywick area on across Appomattox next to James Lane Allen School and bringing that up to almost to Harrodsburg Road, another large pipeline like 24 inches in diameter. We've been working with the neighborhood, and there's some really active neighbors out there as well that we're trying to get them 80% plans so they can comment, because there's a lot of concern about trees. You know, there's going to be a big impact to trees, and so we're going to try to work our way through that as best we can. On the stormwater side of things, there's stuff going on as well, is that we actually have a project that will be building a stormwater infrastructure in Southland Park. Councilmember Bledsoe had helped us with doing some outreach stuff on that during the fall. The whole idea is that basically, this is the win for the park, is that we're going to take where the existing playground area is and turn that into a stormwater control basin. It needs to be, because there's not a lot of available space out there. But what they get out of it is a new playground. So that's going to be a real win. I think people will start seeing that happen, because the sequence of the project is that we build the new playground first before we tear down the old one, because we don't want people to be without a playground. And lastly, I know you share this feeling, and Nancy does as well. I got to shout out for some of our employees. I mean, through this whole thing, we've had a lot of folks that have been to work every day. The treatment plants keep running. The pump stations keep pumping. You know, Nancy's area, the trash still gets collected every week like it's supposed to be. The leaf collection, when she mentioned it before, it has been a challenge for us, but we've been able to, even though we've fallen behind on some of our schedule, that the day-to-day operations have continued through this whole thing, and that I'm super, super proud of the group that I work with.
Yes, thank you. I'm super proud of them too, all of our employees. You remember at the beginning of the pandemic, we prioritized basic services to our citizens. So thank you for that. Shout out to your employees and Nancy's and all of our employees. So finally, we have with us our Director of Project Management, Brandy Peacher. Brandy?
Thank you, Mayor. I feel very honored to be here with you and Nancy and Charlie, that they're getting a lot of good things done in our community. And so I'll start by saying many people may say, well, what is public infrastructure? And it's what you've already heard about from Nancy and Charlie. It's the roads, it's the sewer, it's the electricity, it's telecommunications. But infrastructure is also our public plazas, our trails, and our activated streets and sidewalks and our parks. So the civic infrastructure is also a part of that foundational services and part of our quality of life as part of our neighborhoods. That's important. So the civic infrastructure that I'm involved with primarily focuses on the investment in the Town Branch Commons. And for those who don't know, that's a transformative public-private park and trail system that traces the historic Town Branch Creek through downtown Lexington. And our efforts, particularly along this project, we believe is a strategic investment in our civic assets that can connect people, advance economic and environmental goals, and create a more resilient community. And I believe now more than ever, we rely on these public spaces for our physical and mental well-being, and even to provide us for space for our commerce and our daily social lives now amidst this pandemic. And so our efforts with Town Branch Commons, as well as many of our spaces around our community, is with a goal of providing everyone equitable access to these public spaces around the community. So related to Town Branch Commons, I get the pleasure of working with Charlie and with Nancy and engineering and traffic engineering. You name it, every division is involved in this project in some way. And I think that's what's so important about it, is that we are not just working in a silo. We all work together to make these projects a success. And a project like Town Branch Commons, which is a bike and pedestrian trail through the downtown core, is more than just that. It's linking our downtown to our rural area. We're building upon our city-wide trail system. Nancy already mentioned there's a variety of trails that are underway, and I can hit on a couple of those. So Town Branch Commons, once it's complete, will connect you to Legacy Trail, which we were very happy to celebrate recently, the ribbon cutting of the last leg of that trail, which takes you from Isaac Murphy Memorial Art Garden in the East End all the way to the Kentucky Horse Park. The Commons, as it reaches west, will connect you to the Town Branch Trail, which when complete will reach westward toward Masterson Station Park and follow roughly the path of the Town Branch Creek. And the leg through the Distillery District from Newtown Pike, Oliver Lewis Way to essentially Forbes Road is being funded with the Tiger funds that we're also using for Town Branch Commons in the downtown. So we're working closely with that project. Newtown Pike recently completed a trail connector through the Tiger funding as well. That connects you from Main Street to 4th Street with a separated bike and pedestrian facility that will provide you a link on the west side of downtown. And once completed with the Commons, you'll have a 5.5-mile loop around the downtown core. So that'll be a nice recreational trail as well as a commuter trail, we believe, once it's completed. Others that this will tie into eventually through this full countywide system are Brighton Rail Trail, Citation Boulevard Trail, the Beaumont YMCA, Liberty Road. I mean, and these are just to name a few. There's so many things going on from a bike and pedestrian network. But Town Branch Commons is a little bit more than that. Like I said, working with Charlie, we've looked at green infrastructure from a stormwater standpoint. This project is not just about transportation. It's not just about recreation, but it's also about green infrastructure. And so we're greening this corridor. It's 1.5 miles long, and we're incorporating lush native landscaping, over 300 trees, so it's more than triple what you see today down there. So we're excited about that. And we'll be turning impervious paved surfaces into nearly 2 acres of planting areas. And half of that would be bioswales, and those collect stormwater runoff, cleanse that water, and put it back into our system in a more responsible manner. And of course, Charlie could explain that more intelligently than I could in regards to the technicalities, but it is a feature we're very proud of with this project. So, I'll end with that to say Town Branch Commons is exciting. It will provide a place for us to socialize. That quality of life will be definitely increased through its completion, but it is a bit of our history that we're telling. It's a bit of green infrastructure we're incorporating, as well as it'll be a little bit of fun on a bike or on foot once it's completed. So thank you for having me here today. I'm happy to answer any questions about those projects.
Well, our community is very excited about Town Branch Commons Trail. And I appreciate that you mentioned the importance of the public spaces, because I think that the pandemic has taught us a lot of things, one of which is the importance of outdoor space. So thank you to all of you. Now, I do have some questions. And some of our public have actually weighed in. So the first one is for Commissioner Albright. And so you oversee a lot of important work. And so the first question I have for you comes from Marguerite Floyd, and it is, when will Main Street be repaired and repaved from Martin Luther King Boulevard to Newtown Pike?
As much as we do take care of a lot of different aspects of the city of Lexington, we share certain paving responsibilities with the state transportation cabinet. And that can be confusing. And this is one of those areas where the state will take the lead on Main Street. That is a state road. And so I have checked in response to Ms. Floyd's question. I've checked on an update on Main Street with our partners here in the District 7 office in Lexington for the Transportation Cabinet, and it has risen in priority, and they hope to be able to fund it next year. As you know, and as Charlie alluded to, several things got a little bit derailed when the pandemic started. One of the things that got derailed were the gas tax revenues, and so they've had to suspend a few paving projects this year and delay others. Main Street was actually on the list to be done this summer, but it didn't make the cut when the revenues started dropping, so they hope to be able to do it next spring.
That's good news. Thank you. Now, Charlie, I know that your team is working on a lot of water quality projects right now. And so first of all, we received a comment on the work you do. And I'm going to read this. This is all a quote from one of our citizens. I just want to pass along a sincere thank you to Charlie Martin for all of the progress on the sewer project to improve our stormwater quality. I don't think enough people in Lexington appreciate or say thanks to our public servants, and this project has been a massive undertaking, to say the least. The Euclid Avenue of Champions section was completed ahead of schedule, and the work in my old neighborhood, Joyland, while disruptive, will hopefully resolve the long-standing problems we have seen with sewer water backing up. Also, thanks to Emma Tibbs and the Fayette County Neighborhood Council for pushing to get this project done. May she rest in peace. That ends the quote. So that's a really wonderful comment on the work you're doing. Now, I do have some questions for you, though. So, Charlie, Carolyn Sears asks, when is the water line work along Versailles Road to be finished?
And I may have to get Nancy's help on this one because we don't do the water line. And so I don't know of a water line that is on Versailles Road. My only thing is I can assume that this has to do with the work, the work that's going on Versailles Road as far as the curbs, gutters, and sidewalk work that is being done by Mac Construction right now. I'm assuming that the Kentucky American is taking advantage of the opportunity to upgrade some of their infrastructure on Versailles Road while that work is going on in the same manner that they did on Euclid Avenue. But like I said, I'm not myself aware of the water line because we're not managing that particular project.
Okay. Do you know, Commissioner Albright, anything to add?
Well, we probably should have talked during our meeting earlier this morning, Charlie, because my thinking was she meant Wolf Run. But
okay. Well, maybe she did. I can talk about Wolf Run. Because
let's hold on Wolf Run a second.
Okay.
But let's not forget it.
Okay, I do not know that Kentucky American is actively working on the Versailles Road corridor. We do have both Kentucky Utilities and Columbia Gas out there kind of mixing it up with our contractor right now. And as things tend to go, they are all kind of dancing in some kind of crazy contractor square dance right now between Mason Headley and Parker's Mill, trying to do a lot of improvements while we're there all at the same time. So there is a lot of work going on right now. I'm not aware that Kentucky American is one of them.
Okay, all right. Charlie, the EPA consent decree requires LFUCG to update our existing infrastructure with an estimated cost of $590 million to our city, which has resulted in increased sewer rates to our residents. If we were to expand the urban services boundary, which would require new infrastructure to be built to accommodate the growth, how much would it cost us, and would we see increased sewer rates to accommodate for that sprawl? That question is from Ashley McGuire.
Well, that's a really good question, and there's a lot of layers to that one too.
Yes.
The way that we have set this up in the past is that existing customers are not to pay for new development. New development should sustain itself through its own cost program. The current program in place right now is called the Exactions Program, and it's been around the whole time that I've worked here in the 21 years. And so the Exactions Program is set up such as that the cost of the infrastructure, whether it be sewers or roads or other ones that fall into that program, it is spread out in a cost per acre basis, that once everything is said and done, is that development paid for their own. The only exceptions is that in some cases where that development allows us to improve service to an existing customer or existing group of customers, then urban county government would then contribute to that. One of the citizens mentioned Joyland as an example, and that is a classic example. The expansion area part of that was out towards Newtown Pike, and everything in Joyland drained in that direction. So because 40% of the customers that were served by that new infrastructure were existing customers, urban county government paid for portions of that improvement. But right now the Exactions Program has worked very well. I think there are some things that we're examining about the Exactions Program on how we might do that better. But the summary of that answer is that new development pays for itself, not existing customers, unless there's a unique circumstance where our existing customers benefit from a downstream improvement.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Brandy, you do a lot of work that connects our community through trails, and you mentioned earlier some things about our wonderful trails. So we do have a question for you. This is very interesting, what has happened. Tell us a little bit about the type of archaeological finds that have been found in the development of the Town Branch Commons and Park.
Yeah, that definitely is something that's very exciting. I won't lie, a little unnerving too when you hit something of historic nature while you're trying to complete a construction project on a deadline, but very exciting. We were near Triangle Park on the western side of that, and we were excavating to install some drainage infrastructure there. And as they began their work, our archaeological monitoring company, which we're required to have, by the way, with our federal funding, we must do things in order to protect the environment, one from a sustainability standpoint, but also from a historic standpoint. So we have someone monitoring our excavation at all times. And of course, we kind of knew there was a potential to hit something in this area. Near Rupp Arena, near Triangle Park, this is the original banks of the Town Branch. It is where the city was first founded, and our guys definitely uncovered some of those materials. So what they hit initially was a early to mid 1800s cistern, and once we stopped work on that area, they moved to a different one so the archaeologists could start uncovering that. And as they moved about 20-30 feet away, they hit something else, and it was some foundations of original structures found in that area of town. Other items that they've uncovered are bits of chinaware, some cooking utensils, other luxury goods. And what's most interesting to me is the fact that you have this layering effect of history. They found things from the early 1900s, they found things from the mid 1800s, and once they dug even deeper, they found a layer of material that they believed to be a prehistoric era, meaning it was prior to the establishment of Lexington as we know it in 1775. So you are starting to see just layer after layer unfold as they dig deeper. But that process, while time consuming, has been very efficiently done by our archaeologist, Julien, which is local out of Paris, and then our contractor, Pace Contracting out of Louisville, is working in other locations. That's the benefit of a 1.5 mile long corridor, right? You can move to a different location and keep going. It's pretty fascinating, though.
It is fascinating, and I heard you say it when you're working on a construction deadline. It's always a little bit of an issue when something is found, but it's exciting to understand a little bit more about our history because you've found some artifacts. And it makes me think back to our old Frankfurt Pike landfill, um, where they found all kinds of bottles and things that were quite old. And so it is exciting.
It is.
It's exciting. We hope it doesn't get you too far off your schedule, but
So far, so good. I will say that we were a little bit ahead of schedule because of the less traffic, and I think Charlie experienced some benefits of that with his projects. But yeah, we'll stay on schedule.
Good.
Don't you worry.
Good, very good. All right, let's go back to you, Commissioner Albright. And this question is from Colin Mahoney, who says, does Lexington have any plans to support more green infrastructure and transportation, specifically increased electric vehicle charging stations and extended or additional LexTran routes? And of course, we understand that LexTran's not inside government, but what say you?
We have talked with electric vehicle interest group. They would like to partner with the city on establishing some electric charging stations. Some of that is question of funding availability for us as to how much we can commit to it and where we would install it. But they are very interested in bringing a publicly available electric charging station to the downtown area in one of our parking garages or one of our metered parking. So we've reached over to Gary Means to see what in Lex Park, to see what kind of partnership we may be able to form to expand some electric charging to be publicly available. We have looked into it, but it moves at the speed of government sometimes during both a pandemic and a budget crunch. So
Stay tuned.
right. Very
Well,
good.
that is good. I know I've noticed more electric cars around Fayette County, so that's a very timely question. One more for you right now, Commissioner, and this is from Carolyn Sears, who asks, what's the possibility of having a crosswalk put in at Versailles Road and Village Drive?
I'm happy to tell Ms. Sears that the odds are what the possibility is really good. We do have that unless something goes wrong. I'm anticipating that she's asking about across Versailles Road because there is one already across Village Drive, but we do have that in the plans. So that is a part of improving our pedestrian and bike accessibility. We do plan on having a pedestrian crossing there.
Very good. Thank you. Charlie, can you give us, we know you have some very major projects, and one of the ones was down Manchester Street. We all remember that. And so can you give us a little more detail on that Manchester Street project that took place this year?
Yeah, that sewer had been causing us maintenance problems for quite some time. There weren't overflowing manholes, which are oftentimes the driver of us replacing sewers under the consent decree. This one was just a stoppage problem. The sewer down there was 18 feet deep, and we have a numeric system of how we keep our records. And these were single-digit plans, like 1 through 12. So they're some of the oldest sewers that we had in town. And so they needed to be replaced. And so the opportunity presented itself to get in there to do it. You know, there's never really a great time, but now looking back in light of how traffic kind of simmered down and all that, it worked out well. The biggest challenge we had, not only of it just being as deep as it was, as we dug it up, there was not a lot of rock in there. It was mostly dirt. And so the trench sides just kept falling in, and what was supposed to only be maybe a 10-foot wide trench in some places was 20 feet wide. But long story short is that we were able to get about 1,800 linear feet in the course of starting in November, and we finished up right around 4th of July. And now we're working on the final paving of it. We actually kind of held back on the paving because Town Branch Commons was the part of their project was coinciding with ours. So we were trying to do the final repair once instead of doing it twice. But what drove that project was this sheer age of assets. You know this, is that sometimes those underground pipes, you know, they seem like they're fine, but when they've been there for 100 years, they're not in any better shape than I am, and I'm not quite to 100 years yet. We will actually, just so people will know, is that sometime in the next 5 years be taking and branching off of that sewer, headed across the Corman rail yard over towards the old north side. That whole sewer is roughly the same age. It's one of the oldest and first gravity sewers put in Lexington, and it was intended to go to Town Branch wastewater treatment plant. Town Branch was built in 1918, so that gives you some context. And it goes along the railroad, and it's 20 to 25 feet deep. But it really needs to happen because you know, we've got some underserved existing customers over in the 6th Street, 7th Street, the old north side that really needs to have this core infrastructure replaced. So, you know, Manchester Street, it was a win for us. It took a little longer than I thought it would. It was a little more expensive than it was, but I can say I'm glad that it's over with, because I felt bad for a lot of the businesses that were down there struggling.
Yes, and I like that you brought up the point that you delayed just a tiny bit to coordinate with the Town Branch Commons work. That's one of the things that I think is important for our viewers to understand, is that everybody on here has projects that are important. And one of the things that I think we do so much better nowadays than we did 20 years ago is coordinate so that the street is torn up as little as possible, or just once, for several different projects and that sort of thing. So I'm glad you brought that up. And so that one of the oldest sewers, so that would be 100 years or more old, correct? That
Yes.
you mentioned?
Yeah.
And I think other cities are facing this too, that they have sewers that are 100 or more years old.
Right. Yeah, most of the old sewers are made out of clay pipe, basically like field tile, and the manholes are made out of brick. They're laid brick by brick by brick. In today's world, they come as precast concrete in sections. Some of our old brick manholes, it is amazing though, the craftsmanship that which these people have put these in. It's like the cistern that Brandy mentioned. I mean, it's buried under earth, but I bet you it was still largely intact when they first uncovered it, didn't they? It is amazing.
Yes, and it would be too bad the people who built those don't know they lasted 100 years, right?
Right.
We could have a whole conversation about that, but I'm sort of geeky on that, as Charlie knows, and I find it fascinating what's underground and what's built underground and all of that. But I do have a different question. So Ashley McGuire, this is for you, Charlie, asks, or there's a statement first. She says, our adopted growth plan as a city entails adding more density in a responsible way. How will that density impact the pressure on our infrastructure, particularly sewers?
That's another really, really good question.
I know.
Because it's one that I ask myself a lot as well too. And it's actually a good segue from what I was talking about that sewer that needs to extend over to the old north side area. We're going to have to spend a lot of resources, even in the post-consent decree world, renewing our assets. And it's kind of what you said, other cities have the same issue. Northern Kentucky, especially the river towns, through their sewers are way older than ours are. And so being able to get in and be able to put that new infrastructure in place upgrade it before they change houses into townhouses or some other type of above ground infrastructure will be critically important, I think, for us to be able to be successful. It's not so much that I'm worried about the capacity of that infrastructure. I think it can handle it. It's sized for a fairly high density to begin with. I just worry about the sheer age of it and the fact that if you put new streets, new curbs, and new gutters and don't take care of the thing that's underground and out of sight, out of mind, that we'll regret that. We worked pretty hard at trying to do that. We did a project over off of Lancaster here a few years ago. We've got this 7th Street project that I mentioned earlier planned for that. We're very cognizant of trying to get ahead of other developments in order to be able to replace our infrastructure as well. And it kind of goes in what Nancy said earlier. Columbia Gas, the other underground infrastructure folks are trying to do the same things as well, because they see what happened on Manchester Street and on Euclid. It's a great opportunity to get in there and get in while the getting is good, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you reminded me, you know, sometimes people say they kind of grumble about construction and this lane's blocked off or this area's inaccessible. But what I see is that all these construction projects reflect progress and investment in our community. So for me, it's a good thing. You know, it's a little bit of a headache when you have to detour or things like that. But in the end, it's all very positive because we're improving our community through those projects. So
yeah, particularly when you do it as efficiently as we can. I mean,
yes.
at the end of the day, if you have new sidewalks and new curbs and fresh new pavement, you feel okay about it, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And the same with, although it's not necessarily any of your issue, the same with cranes. You know, somebody came, a few months ago to Lexington and said to me, "What is with all the cranes?" And I said, "That's progress. That's building new buildings, and that's a good thing." So anyway, so Brandy, I want to come back to you because we talked a little bit and you talked and touched on the trails. And tell us your thinking about what you see in terms of why trail system is so important to Lexington. What's your perspective on that?
Well, the trail system to me is more than what meets the eye, I think. It provides so much opportunity. One, for recreation. Everyone should have an opportunity within 10 minutes of walking outside their door to access a park and a trail to be able to recreate. But also it's providing us an alternate mode of transportation throughout our community. The denser we become, the more accessible you'll be able to, the more access you'll be provided via trail to get on your bike or walk somewhere to access your neighborhood goods and needs. Or it might offer you that opportunity to commute in to work. If you're moving in from downtown, if you're headed into downtown and you don't want to sit in traffic one day, hop on your bike, come on in. It gives you another alternative mode of transportation. But also I think that it's about connecting our neighborhoods. So it's good for business, it's good for recreation, but it's really good for us as people, for us to be able to connect with one another, be in these public spaces, have an opportunity to meet people who might not live in your neighborhood. And these trails offer an opportunity to do that. You're out there sharing the same experience. You're coming across people you may not otherwise interact with, and it offers an opportunity for our large community just to become a little bit smaller, I think, on these trails.
Yes, that's great perspective. Not to mention health.
Right.
It's exercise.
That's right.
A few years ago, I went with the leadership group from the chamber to Madison, Wisconsin. And they have a fabulous trail system. And guess what? This is a great venue to say this with everybody on here. um, when they have snow, they plow the trails first. I see Nancy smiling and chuckling, but I think this is a good thing, and I'm just saying this out in public right now, that when we get to the point where we have this 22-mile system from Town Branch through downtown through Legacy Trail, there will be people commuting to work, and it will be important to have those trails free of ice and snow. So just a little bug in your ear, Nancy.
That's definitely something. That's definitely stuff we're already talking about. I'm sitting
Good.
with our commissioner and directors of Parks and Recreation and Environmental Services to say we're building it. Now, how do we operate and maintain it to that world-class level to provide to our residents and visitors? So we understand that it takes that as much as building it.
That's great. Okay, now we have a couple things that you all mentioned, and then I have a couple other things. So, Charlie, I was going to ask you about the Euclid Avenue project, and you mentioned Wolf Run. So tell us just a snippet about each one, whatever.
Well, I'll start with Wolf Run and come back to Euclid Avenue because I didn't understand the water line aspect of it. Basically, we're replacing the sanitary sewer trunk line, or the big line in the Wolf Run area, all the way from Cardinal Valley all the way to the top of the hill, which is Southland Drive. So it's a long way and encompasses a lot of our community. We have just recently completed crossing under Versailles Road with that big pipeline, and so it stopped back there on Roanoke next to where the fire station is. We'll be picking up the next segment of that early next year, going across the park, through the field next to Lane Allen, across Appomattox, across Gardenside Park, on up towards Harrodsburg Road, and just short of Harrodsburg Road we will stop and then plan for the next one. Well, we'll actually already be planning for the next one in advance, because I'll be honest with you, Mayor, how we're getting across Harrodsburg Road and Clay's Mill over to Southland is not very crystal clear to me. It's very, very tight. So that's all that's going to happen in calendar year 2021. People will see a lot of work going on in that James Lane Allen and the two parks that I mentioned. It's Wolf Run Park and Gardenside Park. I hope it goes as well as Euclid Avenue did. You know, I was nervous as a cat about Euclid Avenue. I thought we were going to only be able to do 12 feet a day. It was going to take us 2 years to get from Broadway and Bolivar all the way down to Euclid, High, Fontaine. I couldn't have guessed this in a million years of what would happen have happened. And so I guess that's one of the silver linings of all the drama that's been 2020, is that when everybody started staying home and doing the work from home thing, University of Kentucky closed. I mean, basically it opened up everything for us. I have video of me standing at Rose and Avenue of Champions in early May, and I panned down the street and there are no pedestrians, none. And I thought, this is something out of the Twilight Zone or something. Nobody would have ever thought this. And, you know, it's like some kind of horror movie or something. But anyway, we were able to get it done. We thought it would take 2 years, and we had the pipe in the ground at the end of August. Again, here where we're sequencing some work, you know, engineering already had some streetscape or improvement type of work that they had already planned. So we kind of waited, and Nancy took the lead on getting our money along with their money, along with the other utilities money, to get in there and start the resurfacing, which I think Avenue of Champions is done now, and they're working on Euclid as we speak. The great thing about this is that when the other utilities saw what we were doing, Columbia Gas, Kentucky American both got in there and did major amounts of work along with what we did. And I know UK took advantage of it as far as with steam tunnels and things like that. I feel pretty good with all of that, and such a major $11 million project for us, is that what we're paving over now is pretty sound. And that's a win.
That's a huge win. And, you know, those kinds of projects, Charlie, are things that are so critical to our, really, if you will, basic services of providing, you know, sewage, disposal, and those kinds of things. And yet they're underground, and our public doesn't tend to think of them. They just recognize when it doesn't work, when something backs up or that sort of thing. So it's wonderful. And the projects that all three of you have mentioned represent millions and millions of dollars of investment in our community and the infrastructure, much of which isn't seen or daily thought about by our citizens. So it's critical.
Right. The
And
drainage and transportation aspect of that's what drives our economic engine in totality.
yes, yes, exactly. You know, I can't help but reflecting on one little teeny tiny personal thing. So my first year on the council back in 1999 was Charlie Martin's first year. And before you knew it, we were into stormwater issues and a consent decree. And I think that has been your mission. And, you know, steady as she goes, get these things fixed. And that's what we do as a government, right?
Right. Well, as you know, and I've shared the scorecard with you, is right now we're tracking somewhere around $80 million less than what we would have expected to spend at this point in time. So I'm really blessed with having a really, really strong group that works with me and for me, because we're still where we need to be. It's still a long way to go. It's not the fourth quarter yet, I guess. It's finishing the third quarter, going into the fourth quarter. But I think we're in a good place. And Euclid Avenue, the outcome of that was so uplifting for all of us, because it was the one you could check off, and it was a win. It was such a win.
Yeah, I'm sort of sorry you used that sports analogy, because here we know what can happen in the fourth quarter. But anyway, let's just forget about that. But Nancy, I wanted to go back. You mentioned, let's see, we talked about leaf collection. Everybody always asks me, what about paper recycling? Are we ever going to be able to get back to picking up paper? So give us a little update.
Sure, happy to. And that is still our goal. As you know, but we'll let everybody else know, we are embarking on a pretty substantial upgrade at the recycling center, replacing some equipment that is well past its useful life, that we have been almost literally holding together with duct tape and a lot of spare parts that at this point have to sometimes be specially machined for our equipment because it is out of date. And it is undersized for the amount of material that we're getting these days. And paper is one of the largest recycled products that we receive. As you know, and several of our citizens have mentioned to you and occasionally to me, that was one of the big things they threw away was unwanted mail and things like that. So we all feel the pinch right now. We do still hope to get back there once we finish the upgrades at the recycling center, which are underway. We have selected a contractor. They are preparing shop drawings now for us that we will be able to get underway. Again, unfortunately, a lot of the recycling equipment is pretty expensive, and so they start to work once they have the contract in place. And so it will be a few more months before that before that equipment is delivered and installed and operational. In the meantime, we do still have our big yellow bins that we hope that people are taking advantage of still. We see that. We still collect those routinely. Most of them once a week, some of them twice a week. We do respond if we get a citizen phone call telling us that it's full before we anticipated it. We will go pick it up that day and make sure that we keep them rotated as best possible. We get good, clean, high quality material out of that. And so we hope that people will continue to supply their unwanted paper through that process in the meantime.
That's great. I intended to ask you if you consider those to be a successful interim step. It sounds like they have been.
Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. Can you remind everybody, this is a teeny tiny detail, but we get asked frequently, can people still recycle a couple kinds of cardboard? Tell us just briefly about what you can recycle in cardboard and what you can't.
Sure. So one of the guiding comments that our recycling center manager has told me, and it stuck with me, was brown goes with brown. So if you have heavy duty paper, it can go in with the cardboard. That's really based on the granularity of the fiber. If you have anything that's corrugated or things like that, it can go in with the cardboard in your Rosie.
Okay.
And anything that's paperboard, which is a lot of the cereal boxes type things, can go in with your paper.
Very good. You know, it's interesting. That's one of the most common questions I hear. It's sort of simple, but it's not. So thank you
There's a
for
lot
that.
of details about paper, yes.
Yes. And then anything, you've pretty much touched on the leaf vacuum pickup. And I know that in some years we've had snow, which we aren't going to have this year, right? So that we're going to get all of our leaf vacuum finished and then we'll have our snow, we hope.
That would be great.
So Brandy, I want to finally ask you to just briefly talk about, you know, we've talked a lot about trails, but people love our trails. How's the Legacy Trail working out? Success?
That's what I've heard. That's what I see.
Yes.
Yeah, so the Legacy Trail, they cut the ribbon, and that was a Division of Engineering project. So I can't take credit for that one. We've got a hardworking group of people over there who've made that happen. And so that section runs essentially occurred on 4th Street from Jefferson Street to Elm Tree Lane, and then Elm Tree Lane from 3rd Street to 4th Street, and then you continue on over to Midland Avenue. And so that's once it's all completed, you've got a 12-mile stretch from the North Side YMCA to the Kentucky Horse Park campgrounds, and then you've now completed that from the North Side YMCA all the way over to Isaac Murphy Memorial Art Garden.
Mm-hmm.
And so we saw that Legacy Trail was very successful already with that first phase that was done. So to see now this final leg completed, we're hearing a lot of positive feedback, especially from those who live in the East End neighborhood, and excited to finally see that completed. And then there's talk now of how do we enhance all of these spaces that are accessible off of the trail. So we're looking at what are the upgrades that need to occur in adjacent parks and plazas and streets. Mm-hmm. And one thing leads to the next when you do public improvements, and that's a good thing. Civic investment, it indicates that there is a desire and a want to continue to improve the neighborhood.
And if I recall, and Nancy, you can chime in too, if I recall, isn't Scott County then taking, we end our Legacy Trail and then they're picking it up and taking it through Scott County? Is that what I understand? Or a portion of Scott County maybe?
That's what I understand, Mayor, that they are working toward connecting to our facility at the county line. And, I've met with trail advocates throughout the state, and it's amazing to me. I am not an avid cyclist, but ever since I've been working on the Town Branch Commons, I now have been back on a bike, and I've been through urban environments and through rural areas. So that 10-year-old kid in me finally got back on the bike in her mid-30s, so that's good.
Good. Very good.
But you're seeing a big system that we're able to connect to, even nationally.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Well, I want to thank each of you, Nancy and Charlie and Brandy, for joining today. And I so appreciate all the great work you and your teams do for our infrastructure and public works, and also appreciate you taking time today to answer questions and talk so that the public can understand a few of your projects, and thank the viewers who submitted questions. And you know, COVID-19, as everybody knows, has changed our lives in almost every way. And in a way, it's been 8 months we've been in this, and yet our projects continue. And so this is a great way to update our neighborhood folks, our citizens, on what you all are doing. So I want to encourage people to tune in tomorrow, Wednesday, November 18th at 11 a.m. We're going to have panelists discussing the Mayor's Commission for Racial Justice and Equality, a totally different subject. And all of our sessions are recorded and they'll be available online. We'll share links so that anybody who wants to get on can get on and watch. So again, thanks to each of you. Continue your great work. Thanks to our viewers, and everybody have a great day. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you.